but I never thought it was quite interesting enough for my main YouTube channel, so I'm just going to post this on my other channel. I'm standing in front of the old shop and turning around, and here you can see a little outhouse that they used actually at the time when they rebuilt the house. And here's the driveway and the carport, and behind that the house. And here's my mom's garden, and here's the lumber storage shed, so let's go there. This is what's left of my dad's lumber stash. Quite a bit actually, because he had quite a lot and he slowed down quite a lot in his old age. Old lawn tractor here and various junk we keep here. This whole building is actually a pole barn, and a couple of years ago a friend and I fixed it up a little bit. What had happened is my dad really wedged the poles into the ground with rocks, and with frost heaving and such, these posts slowly ratcheted out of the ground, especially this one, and this one. And so I cut these ones off with a chainsaw and let them come down a bit and then tied them back together with strapping. This does of course mean that there's no stiffness where the joint is, but the whole building itself is stiff enough already, so there's no risk of these poles now tipping over. When we built this, it was shortly after the fire of the old barn, so we didn't have enough of the right kind of wood. So we actually used a really junky wood, poplar, for this. And the problem is some of the screws on the roof became a little bit loose, and a little bit of water got in even though we put all the screws on the ridges. And so Eric and I put in a few cedar beams next to the ones that got rotten. The ones that are rotten are still there. Most of these are still good because most of the screws did not leak. And then we also went up on the roof and we put some very sticky roof patch tape on where all the holes were and put the screws in different places for the ones that leaked. Got lots of firewood here for heating in the winter. This part here actually used to be the milk house of the old barn. The old barn burnt down, and my dad had somebody with a bulldozer push in the old foundations and cover it with soil. So the barn used to be right here, and the grass does turn brown here sooner if it's dry. This addition, he just used the old foundation and put a roof over it, so that's a nice place to dry firewood. The back of the shed here, oh yeah, you can see all the silvery bits of aluminum tape that we put on the roof for where all the little leaks were. And then there's an area back here for stacks of lumber. None here anymore, but this is a good area for drying it. And those bars are there to keep the cows from getting in there and shitting all over the place. And we still have a few 8x8 beams, which are very handy when I have to fix stuff on the cottage foundations and such, for just shoring things up with. All this wood has been here for many years, but it's still good. So the only reason this isn't all overgrown with bush around here is because the neighbor's cows are allowed to graze here. The neighbor maintains the fence in return for letting them graze, and that keeps the reeds and such down because the cows just eat them. Some old apple trees. I wish people still planted apple trees, but it seems nobody cares about that anymore. My mom harvests some of these apples to make apple cider with. This building here is an old log cabin. The previous owners that we bought this from in 1980 were Finns, and Finns like their saunas. So this used to be a sauna, and some of these concrete bits here is where the stove was on. The front room was where you changed, and in the back room was the actual sauna. But they did put a sauna in the house, so they themselves hadn't used this in many years. This building unfortunately needs the roof repaired, and it's just not being used, so if it was on my property I'd fix it, but when I'm here I don't have enough time, so it's biting the dust. I last fixed that roof probably around 1986. And here's the lumber shed again, and the house, which has got hand split cedar shakes everywhere, and here's the garden. So I'm back behind the shop again, lumber shed here, and back here is what's left of the old sawmill. And that sawmill was one of the main reasons why we ended up here, because my dad liked the idea of a property with a sawmill on it. This is a log building here, not part of the sawmill. Probably quite old. Look at the cool joinery on the corners here. And that was just for animals. It was last used agriculturally as a chicken coop, but that was probably at least 40 years ago. And the way I know that is if we look on the wall there, you can see those three things here. That's for putting bars on there for the chicken to roost. That and having an access door up here where the chickens can come in and out, but hopefully not any wolves or anything like that. This whole building is piled full of oak, but unfortunately it's a bit far from where I live, and realistically the effort of hauling this back is comparable to just milling new stuff, so it'll probably stay here for good until the roof completely goes. There's tin on the roof, but it's a bit open on the ridge. So far the wood is still kept dry. And here's what's left of the sawmill building. This is about a third of the building. The rest of it collapsed in 1998 when there was a really big snowfall. And the actual workings of the sawmill, my dad sold for maybe a couple of $100 to somebody, which in retrospect was a good thing, because otherwise it would have just rusted to bits. So hopefully somebody has a use out of it. So the whole saw blade mechanism used to be right in here. This was full of pulleys and such. That all got taken out when somebody took out the workings. And there was rails that went along here, extended to the end of the building. And out this way a bit, you can still see a concrete foundation back there. That was the far end of the rails, and those were for the carriage that held the logs. And there used to be a big old bulldozer right here that powered the whole thing, just for the engine. And it was my job and my siblings' job to take the lumber off the sawmill right here. And we'd carry that out and store it into different stacks by thickness. And my dad would be working on the other side, putting the logs on and moving them and all that. There was no hydraulics on this thing, so the only thing that was powered was, of course, the saw blade and the carriage back and forth. There used to be a big lever right about here that he'd pull or push to make it go. In fact, there's a hole in the foundation, which is where a bolt went through there to actually activate the mechanism on the inside. And then the sawdust, there was a chain that pulled it all out onto here, and this would always turn into a big pile here. In fact, you can even see there's a bit of sawdust here. The sawdust takes a long time to really decompose so that vegetation can grow on it. So this is remains of the sawdust here from last time this sawmill was used, which would have been maybe about 1997 or so. What's left of this building is probably also going to collapse in the next few years. This could be saved, but really there's nothing of value under it, and when I am here I only have so much time. Here's what's left of a homemade trailer that my dad had made. Back in the 80s it was still legal to just have something without any lights on it and use that, but since then it wasn't allowed to use anymore, so it's just stayed here and rotted. It was all just made out of old car parts. Frickin' pesky aeroplanes, come on, go away, I want to record. This area back here used to be full of trashed cars when we bought the place, but at some point the scrap metal value got high enough that people came with a payloader to collect them free of charge, and we were just glad to be rid of them. Of course, nowadays they'd actually be worth money as scrap, but it's better to be rid of them. Some old fridges here. These are the tanks from old hot water tanks and various miscellaneous bits. This trailer actually we used at some point. This is a deck from an old mower that no longer works. So, well, private junk collection. That's how it works in the country. Some of this junk that's lying around has been here for, probably 50 years. So this is some piece of haying equipment. I think some kind of a rake to be towed behind horses. And these tines here would pick up the grass, and then every once in a while you dump it to just put it into rows. There used to also be some horse-drawn seed drills around here, but don't know what happened with those. This is the log building from the other side again. My dad asked me back in '85 to nail the aluminum roofing from the old barn on here. Basically, we redid the extension part of it with a newer roof, and then we figured might as well nail these on top of the old sheeter shingles on here because they were just about gone. And that's saved this building for as long as it has. And for a ridge cap, I had just nailed some old cedar slabs on top, but those have fallen off since then. So ideally there'd be something nailed on there now, but again, I just have not had the time to spend here this summer at all. So back about 50 years ago, this whole area used to be fairly actively farmed, but it hasn't really been since then, because if you want to make a living farming, you're much better off doing it somewhere where the growing season's a bit better and the land is more fertile. And I guess we have enough food, so there hasn't really been a need to use this land, so much of it is slowly overgrowing, except for where the cows are grazing, beef cows. There's a fair bit of that going on here.